Hello and welcome to Ben and Matt Watch Game of Thrones.
Brought to you by SciFiChristianPodcast.com. Matt, this week we're taking a look at Episode 4, Bastards, Cripples, and Broken Things.
Yes, best title they've had so far. Great. I mean, I like the theme of the episode and the title, actually.
Absolutely. But before we do that, we want to welcome all of you new subscribers to our YouTube page.
Welcome.
And I want to issue a correction from last week that comes courtesy of one of our new subscribers.
All right, let's hear it.
Actually, several people put this up in the comments that, and I'm going to issue this in as spoiler-free way as I can.
All right, good.
But last week we had, I had specifically made a declaration that Jaime Lannister was behind the assassination attempt on Bran, the guy who came into his room with a knife. I said that Jaime Lannister sent that person.
Yes.
And without giving anything away, that might have been a bit too soon to jump to that conclusion.
So you're saying that you made a mistake.
I made a mistake.
And maybe this mistake was based on your foreknowledge of what's about to happen.
It was actually based on my lack of foreknowledge.
Interesting.
Because I was forgetting a very important part of something that happens later in the books.
So, in case you're just tuning in, Ben has read all the books. I have not. So this is, I'm learning from you. So you've taught me wrong so far.
Yes.
Thank you.
One thing.
Okay, one thing.
One thing, but it is corrected now, and we are ready to move on to Episode 4. So Matt, we had the action primarily taking place in 4 different places this week.
We did. One was King's Landing again.
You are correct.
One was the Wall again.
2 for 2.
I'm trying to think. Well, the Free Cities actually arrived in their homeland.
Vase Dothrock is the city that they arrived at.
Vase Dothrock.
Yes.
And the 4th place, I would call this the King's Road.
Kind of, yeah. We kind of followed Tyrion's journey down from the Wall back to the Crossroads Inn, but we will hold off talking on what happens there.
And we're not going to talk about who he ran into?
Not yet.
Okay, because I have a question about her when we get there.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll save that for the end because it was also the end of the episode.
Very, very interesting. Where would you like to start, Ben?
Well, let's start over in the Free Cities.
The Free Cities. Oh my gosh.
Right.
I think I really like this storyline because as I think through some of my favorite scenes from every episode, I really like what's happening here. We're finally seeing Dany stand up for herself.
Yeah, what I liked about this is there's a strong progression from last week to this week. In every episode, we've seen her get more and more assertive, first with her relationship with Khal Drogo, and then with Viserys. Last week, she kind of stood up to Viserys, but someone else intervened.
Yes.
This week, we saw her stand up for herself and take on Viserys single-handedly.
It was awesome. So he tried to do his typical I'm a huge jerk brother thing where
You've woken the dragon!
Oh my gosh, this is the best line of the whole thing. This is what he says. You are a horse lord slut, and now you've awoken the dragon. And he's like a jerk, huge jerk.
Horrible.
And so she, was it like a belt or a necklace?
Yeah,
she whipped him across the face.
Totally.
It was awesome. His stunned look of disbelief was perfect. And then she said, the next time you lay your hands on me, it'll be the last time you have hands.
So cool. Didn't you want to just stand up and applaud Daenerys for that?
I was very glad to see her progressing in that way.
And they've perfectly captured her character from the book because you get that same progression in the book where she's very, very timid and afraid in her first couple chapters and then slowly gets more and more assertive. It's wonderful.
Khal Drogo, is that her?
Khal Drogo.
He wasn't even in the episode, was he?
I don't think so.
Just as they're entering him?
Briefly.
Because then later she's talking to the translator.
The Jorah Mormont.
He's a knight?
Yes. He is an exiled knight.
Okay. And we learned a little bit more about him last night. I can't remember what it was though. Do you want to fill us in?
We learned that he was exiled for selling slaves.
Okay.
And he was trying to impress his wife by getting extra money to buy her stuff or something like that. They didn't make it extremely clear just yet, but he was selling slaves, and he was exiled from his homeland because of that, because that's illegal in the Seven Kingdoms. And then his wife...
Seven Realms?
No.
Oh, okay.
And then his wife was now with another man. So
oh, that's right.
Yes.
So is there anything you can fill in about any of their conversation, the translator and Dany?
Are you just going to keep calling him the translator?
Okay.
Because he's not.
Okay, the knight, what's his name again?
Sir Jorah Mormont.
George. So tell me about more about Jorah.
What else do you want to know? I mean, that's basically
I don't know, it seems like there's... he seems like maybe we can trust him, but there might be something going on.
See, I'm happy to fill in knowledge, but I'm not going to spoil anything for you.
So Dany says to Jorah that she doesn't believe her brother could even lead an army, even if he had one.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yes.
So I think she is implying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is she implying that she thinks she could lead this army?
I think that would be the clear implication, and I would think you are fully justified in drawing that conclusion from what she said.
Yes.
So awesome stuff happening in the Free Cities. Over on the Wall.
Wait. Before we go to the Wall.
Something more on the Free Cities.
I just wanted to say something to you.
To me.
That we've already kind of talked about off camera. I feel like now we're in the 4th episode, I'm finally starting to understand this world.
You are.
Like, I've been very confused. Even though you're filling in blanks and I'm following along the story and interested, it's like I'm finally getting a grasp of who everybody is, how everything interrelates, and so it's going good.
And to that end, I actually found something cool on HBO's website this week that I want to recommend to all of our viewers out there, especially people in your shoes who have not followed the series. Last week I recommended picking up a copy of the book to follow along with the appendix and keep track of everyone. We've got one better for you. If you go to viewers-guide.hbo.com, which you can see on the screen right here where I'm pointing, that is a phenomenal guide HBO is putting out that covers characters, and it also has a really cool interactive map out there so you can see where all of the action is taking place. So, viewers-guide.hbo.com.
Wow.
It'll help you keep track of the series, and for those of us who are fans and kind of know all the characters already, the interactive map is awesome. So check that out for sure.
Speaking of HBO,
yes,
they gave us a huge shout out this week.
They did. HBO's official Game of Thrones YouTube page favorited our last review, so thank you, HBO.
So let's give them a shout out back. Hi, HBO people that are watching our videos.
They really need it from us.
Thanks for favoriting us and skyrocketing our views.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Definitely. Let's move on to The Wall.
All right, so The Wall. We saw a couple really cool things happen. First, we had a new character.
Yes, a very, I thought, likable character.
Absolutely. Samwell Tarly.
Sam, named after Sam Wise.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Not really.
Not really, but he seemed kind of like him.
I don't know, maybe George R. R. Martin. Yeah. Drew the influence. Yeah, a little bit. Sam is a wimp.
Big time wimp. He actually called himself a coward.
Yes. Yeah. He is a horrible fighter.
Check.
He does not see well.
Check.
And
he's afraid of heights.
He's afraid of heights, which, so working on a 1,000-foot wall is really
defending a 1,000-foot wall.
Yeah.
Not good. So his story of how he ended up there was definitely moving.
Oh my gosh, huge highlight of the episode for me. Because this is what's so great about this series, both in the books and in the show, is that you meet all these characters and they're obviously very flawed people. Sam flawed in different ways than other people, but certainly you kind of meet him and you think, what's this guy's problem? And then you realize, oh, this is what's been going on in his life, and then you can really connect with that character.
So the question I'm asking myself, not having read the books like you, is Sam introduced because he's going to be a very important character, or is Sam introduced to us just to make Jon Snow look even more like a hero?
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by very important character. Is he going to be the key to the entire thing? Probably not.
No.
But he's an important character.
Okay.
I think he's more than just somebody there to prop up Jon Snow.
Because Jon Snow, every week, becomes a bigger and bigger hero, a more likable character.
Yeah, and this week we saw him kind of really step into that leadership role that he had we'd seen him take on a little bit last week.
Yeah, in fact, some of the other people that, what do they call them?
Pip and Gren.
No, what's their group?
The Night's Watch.
Night's Watch.
Yeah.
The Night's Watch people actually obey him more than they obey guy.
Sir Alliser Thorne.
The mean guy.
Who is now an enemy of Jon Snow.
No, what do you mean by that, now an enemy?
Well, they weren't getting along so well in the last episode, but after in this episode we saw Jon stand up for Sam and really go against Alliser Thorne's commands.
Not just that, get others to go against his commands.
So Jon has made himself an enemy.
Wow.
And that's an important thing to remember.
This is going to be huge.
Possibly.
Wow.
Yeah. Other cool thing on the wall. There was a lot of internet chatter about why we weren't seeing Ghost, Jon's direwolf.
Yeah. To be honest, it didn't even cross my mind. I never thought about it once.
You wouldn't have thought about it, but in the book, a lot of the scenes like where he's interacting with Tyrion last week, Ghost is there the entire time during those scenes. So people were asking, have they just decided to cut Ghost out all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Nope, he was there and he looked awesome.
Okay. It appeared to me like the wolf appeared out of nowhere. Is that? I mean, all of a sudden he's on top of this guy and he had red eyes?
He does have red eyes.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, Ben, Did the direwolf appear out of nowhere?
He did not.
Okay. Because he's called Ghost. I mean, kind of makes sense.
Okay.
Okay.
No, he didn't appear out of nowhere, but he is. He's a different sort of direwolf. Just like, remember, the direwolves parallel to the Stark children.
Definitely.
So, for example, we saw Sansa's direwolf die, and we'll get to this in...
Oh my gosh. Is she going to die?
Doesn't mean she's going to die, but
bum.
we see her, and we'll get to this when we get to King's Landing, but we
Yeah.
see her more emotionally cut off now that that has happened. And she has taken an emotional step back from her enthusiasm.
Wow, those direwolves, they are more important than I thought.
Bran's direwolf, Grey Wind, protected his life.
Mm-hmm. And now his wolf
Or
can't.
maybe it's Summer. I don't remember if Grey Wind or Summer is Bran's direwolf. One of them is Bran's, one of them is Rob's.
Bran's wolf can't walk now either.
Don't think that's
No,
accurate.
that's not true. Okay.
Quit lying to our viewers.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
We are trying to be honest.
So we
here.
go to King's Landing, or do you want to talk more about the wall?
Let's see. Is there anything else we need to say at the wall? I don't think so.
No.
Pay attention to the development of Jon. Pay attention to his relationship with Sam and how Sam develops under Jon's leadership.
So we met Pip and another guy last week. Is
Gren.
Sam now... Oh, Graham.
Gren.
Would you say Sam is the most important of Jon Snow's sidekicks?
He is certainly more important than either Pip or Gren.
Very good.
So down in King's Landing, we had 3 new characters. I'll list them at the beginning, but then we'll kind of talk about them as we go through the episode. We had Janos Slynt, who is the captain of the not of the King's Guard, of the City Watch.
Oh, yeah. That and him and Jaime had fought together, but then Jaime didn't remember him. Is that the same guy?
This is the guy who...
That's
was
the message deliverer?
That was Jory Cassell, who works for House Stark.
Okay.
Janos Slynt is the guy who, at the very beginning of the episode, was appearing before the small council. And he was telling them about how the city is all really rowdy now that the tourney is going on, and I need more men. And Ned Stark says, I'll give you people from my personal guard to help you out.
All right.
Wasn't very important in this
Don't think I
episode,
remember that at all.
but you can go on to viewersguide.hbo.com and see a character bio of him. You want to pay attention to him because he will be more important in the weeks to follow.
I can literally not picture his face.
Second, we met Gregor Clegane,
The Mountain?
the mountain that rides.
Oh, that's his full title?
Yes.
The Mountain That Rides.
Gregor Clegane is not a nice fellow, and we will talk about him more later.
Okay, he seemed horrible.
And then finally we met Gendry, the blacksmith apprentice, who also turns out to be King Robert's bastard.
That's right. And it was kind of funny how Ned figured out, like, he just looked at him and was like, you
Yes.
look like him.
Yes.
So.
Very astute observation.
And it's interesting that the guy that died at the beginning of the show, the guy with the thing on his eyes, Andrew, maybe?
Oh, in the first episode,
Yeah.
Jon Arryn.
Jon Arryn, he was visiting this little blacksmith kid.
Okay, so let's just talk about Ned's investigation, because that was a huge part of this episode.
Yeah, so Littlefinger advised him, don't investigate, just play it cool.
Yes.
He did not listen to that advice.
Which is probably a good thing. What do you think about Littlefinger?
Okay, this is what I'm going to say. I'm just going to be flat out honest.
Yeah.
I like Peter Littlefinger, whatever his last name is.
Tyre Baelish.
So this is the second week in a row, I believe, that you've really emphasized, don't believe everything that people say. You never know if you can trust them. So you're really pushing that Littlefinger might not be to trust. To me, he seems like a nice guy. Like I would consider him a likable character at this point.
He does definitely seem that way in the show. And if I was watching it for the first time, I would probably be trusting him. Even though he told Ned not to trust him.
And he did. He really did. But usually when people say, you shouldn't trust me, and they're saying it in a friendly way, you're like, Littlefinger, you're just playing around.
Yeah. So we saw Ned kind of following Jon Arryn's footsteps, going through this whole investigation he was doing. There's a few big clues here, and I'm going to point out where they were without actually telling you what the clue was.
All right.
The book that Jon Arryn was reading, pay attention to the title.
Okay, what is the title?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
You can go back and watch for yourself, because I will emphasize certain words in the title if I do
Okay,
that.
got it.
Second, Jon Arryn's final words.
Oh yes, the seed.
The seed is strong.
The seed is strong.
Think
So,
about that.
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind, if we know that we've met an offspring of the king, then maybe Blacksmith Kid is strong?
Maybe. And then finally, pay attention to something that Gendry says when Ned is interviewing him. And if you look for the common theme between those 3 things, I think you'll be able to put together some pretty good clues for why Jon Arryn was murdered.
Wait, which one is Gendry?
Gendry's the blacksmith. King Robert's bastard.
Okay, I can remember pretty much that whole conversation. We didn't talk about the character that gave him the book, did we?
That was Grand Maester Pycelle.
Yeah,
we talked about him last week a little bit.
Oh yeah,
He's becoming more prominent now.
He seems interesting.
Yeah, he is an intriguing character, and I will say more about him.
Why is he wearing chains?
Oh, all maesters. This is part of their. I know they call them meisters in the show.
Yeah.
Again, I go by the audiobook pronunciations. All the maesters, as part of their training process, they have to forge a chain that goes around their neck. Each link in the chain is made of a different metal, and each metal represents an emphasis of their study.
Okay.
So it's kind of an interesting touch.
It kind of would be horrible to wear around all the time.
It would be.
Couldn't you just hang it on your wall
No.
like a diploma?
Probably not.
Okay.
So
we talked about the investigation.
And then we also saw a brief scene with Sansa, which shows that her demeanor is maybe changing a little bit. There's a lot of disillusion in what she was feeling and experiencing.
I saw your notes over there, and I thought you wrote that Sansa is delusional, but it says disillusioned, not
Disillusioned, yes.
So Sansa, she's mad at Ned. She still is wondering if Joffrey will be into her.
Yeah.
And he's not into her right now. He seems mad. And she also has this fear that she won't be able to have male offspring.
Yes.
Is that an important thing to think about, or is that just a typical kid worrying about everything?
What I would emphasize from this is that she is angry at her father, and there's maybe a bit of division there between the two of them.
Very interesting.
And I will say no more about it.
So, let's go back to Jon Arryn.
Okay.
He was investigating Robert's son.
Yeah.
His bastard son.
Yes.
But we believe that the Lannisters were behind his murder.
Yes.
So how does this line up? Would the Lannisters be trying to hide the fact that he had another kid? Is that what it was all about? Or could it be something more?
I'd say it's something more. King Robert knows that he has illegitimate children all over the place.
Oh man. I feel bad for those kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
We also saw this weird scene of that just shows how despicable a King Robert really is.
Yeah.
Where he is in bed with at least 4 women.
At minimum.
We saw 3 come out, and there was still at least 1 in there.
It sounded like there was more than one voice coming out of that room.
Yes.
Did you hear what he shouted when...
I did not.
I could get this wrong.
Okay.
So I hope I'm not wrong. You'll have to go back and watch. But when the door opened and Jamie was mad, I think we heard him shout something like... I don't even know if I should say this. I bet you smell like blackberry jam.
Very nice.
Something like that. Go back and listen. It was awkward and definitely inappropriate.
So here's one of the cool things about the series, though. The Lannisters have obviously been cast as the villains so far. Would you agree?
Yes.
However, I think we can start to feel a little sympathy for Cersei Lannister because she's married to a guy who is cheating on her.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie is forced to stand outside and listen to his sister be insulted.
That's what those are his words.
Those are his words.
Yeah.
And so Robert is not a sympathetic character.
He's not really, and the only reason that we as viewers connect with him is because we see the bond between him and Ned, and Ned's really our protagonist.
So does that change your view of the Lannisters at all?
No, it didn't to me. Jamie just seems like really mean. What's the... Cersei. I don't know. When she came in to talk to Ned in this episode, it felt like there was a little threatening going back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
Not a little,
a lot.
What was it that she said? Something about...
He said, I also know how to kill my enemies, and she said, so do I.
Yeah. So, the Lannisters are bad.
Yeah.
Except for Tyrion.
Yes. Well, let's get to Tyrion.
Let's talk
Wait. Oh, we got one more thing in King's Landing. How could we miss this?
Oh, Gregor the Mountain?
Gregor Clegane is jousting against Jon Arryn's former squire, Sir Hugh.
Right, who has been strangely knighted, and they're saying this is very unusual. That happened quickly. He was a squire, all of a sudden he's a knight.
Sir Hugh would have been involved in Jon Arryn's investigation.
He wasn't really that nice, though.
He was not.
So...
And he is now dead.
He is. He took a jousting stick to the throat.
And may I suggest this might not have been an accident?
You may suggest it. And that scene was disgusting.
I was going to ask you, you don't do too well with graphic violence.
They let it really...
They did.
Stay on that shot of the blood. And no, it was like coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
And that was messed up. Let's just be honest.
Gregor Clegane. I can't say his name. Clegane is very messed up.
Yeah, we found out that the Hound, the Hound is a character who, I don't know why, but I think he seems okay. How do you feel about the Hound?
Hound is a very complex character, and I will say no more.
And just as a reminder, Hound is, he watches Joffrey.
He's basically Joffrey's bodyguard.
Yeah, okay, so he's the brother of the Mountain Rider.
Yes.
So we've seen the scar on the Hound's face before, and we find out from Littlefinger. So Ben, you're telling me not to necessarily trust Littlefinger. But Littlefinger tells a story.
You can trust this one.
He tells a story of how, as children, the Hound was playing with one of the Mountain Rider's toys, and Gregor got mad and pushed his brother's, 6-year-old face into a fire, burning them.
The reason you can trust this one is in the book. It's actually the Hound who tells the story directly. They just shifted the dialogue around a bit and gave it to Littlefinger.
So Gregor, we haven't actually seen his face too much, have we? I think he opened up for a second, but yeah, he seems pretty bad. Like, is this thing called a jousting stick when they're like,
I don't think so.
And they got him right in the throat, and the wood broke off. And
it's called a lance, I believe.
A lance, not a jousting stick. Okay, we'll
call it a jousting stick.
We'll make a note of that. Yeah, that was a messed up scene.
That was. And then, should we get to Tyrion then?
Yes, the best character. Why not? Let's talk about him last.
So we start with Tyrion in Winterfell, and we are introduced to a new character there, Hodor, who's kind of a simple-minded guy who's carrying Bran around.
And the only word he can say, it sounds like, is his own name. Is that correct?
Yes. It's actually not his name.
It sounds like his name.
Well, they start calling him Hodor because that's the only word he ever says. So they
oh my gosh, no, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he picks up Bran and he carries him around.
Now, this is very curious, though, in terms of what happens in this scene.
Okay.
Because we've had Tyrion is accused by Littlefinger, essentially, by implication, of being behind the assassination attempt on Bran.
Mm-hmm.
But yet we see him showing a great deal of sympathy to Bran when he is at Winterfell.
He did. He created something so that Bran could still ride even with his paralyzed legs.
Yes. And we also saw a little bit of interaction between Tyrion and Theon Greyjoy. You were wondering who Theon Greyjoy was?
Oh, yes.
Now you know?
This is the best introduction to the character. They really showed who he is, even though he's been around.
Yep.
So, yeah, that was good. And Robb was kind of mean.
He was.
Who's now lord over Winterfell in his father's absence.
Yes.
But, yeah, so Tyrion went on his way and he decided to find a different place to stay. And who would he come across?
Catelyn Stark.
Now, Catelyn Stark. Now, I would just want to stop here for just a second. I've been meaning to ask you this. Well, I wanted to ask you last week and I forgot.
Okay.
Catelyn, wife of Ned, currently living in Winterfell while Ned is at King's Landing.
Yeah.
Why, Ben? Can't Catelyn live with Ned in Winterfell? If Robb is lord over Winterfell anyways, why can't Catelyn live in King's Landing with Ned?
In the books, one of the things they've changed in the series is that all of the kids are 3 years older than they were in the books.
Really?
So Robb is only 14 in the books, whereas here he's 17. So it might seem a little bit more realistic that he could be in Winterfell by himself.
Okay.
However, in the book, it's much more realistic that she would stay home and be with Robb and be taking care of Winterfell.
Why do you think they chose on HBO to age them by 3 years?
I think because it's so hard to find good child actors. And it's like, take Arya, for example. That's a really complex role, and it'll become more complex. And it gets that much harder the younger you go to find good child actors.
We didn't talk about Arya at all. Looks like she's continuing her training. We didn't see your favorite sword character.
We didn't. Syrio Forel was not there. But minor scene, she's continuing.
Yeah, she's continuing her training. So, so Tyrion runs into Catalina. Catalina? No.
Catelyn.
And they are at like a pub or something.
They are at the Crossroads Inn.
Okay. And we see the dramatic call out. She's going to call him out and say, "You were behind my son's attempted murder."
Tyrion has been arrested.
Not just arrested. She got she's kind of like a queenish figure over at Winterfell. She got all of the tavern people to be like, swords.
Join in.
Yeah.
Now, I won't talk about this character a lot, but for those of you who've read the book, the guy at the very end who Tyrion flips the coin to is Bronn, who, if you've read the book, becomes a fairly important character later on.
The guy who's going to give Tyrion his room?
Yes.
Okay.
So I won't say more about him because I think the show will develop him more, and we'll talk more about him next week likely. But that was Bronn for those of you who have read the books and are wondering where he was in that whole scene.
Okay. Well, Ben, last week you might remember that I complained a little bit, even though I liked the episode, it ended kind of, it faded off into the distance. This one was more of a dramatic ending that makes you want to see what's going to happen next. And so I enjoyed this. I really liked this episode.
I was pretty sure this was where they were going to end the episode, even before I watched a scene of it, just because I knew where the story was going, and it didn't disappoint. It was a great ending. Love the ending, also love the episode as a whole. Each week seems to be getting stronger and stronger. The show is getting momentum, fleshing out its characters more. I loved it.
Speaking of fleshing out the characters, we didn't talk about this scene, but the guy's name, Viserys,
Yes.
the brother that we hate. We actually learned a little bit about him, his backstory and his growing up, and for a second, just for a second, you could be a little sympathetic to that character.
And then he goes nuts again.
And then he's totally mean to the slave girl, and he's a jerk. But they're talking about dragons, and you may know that I like dragons.
You do.
So they're saying the dragons are dead, but they're also saying that his line has dragon blood. Any truth to that, or should I just ignore that?
All I will say is that if you like dragons, you will not be disappointed.
Yes, this is going to be awesome.
And I will not say anything more beyond that.
I'm just going to look at my notes, but I don't think there's any better way to end it than that.
I don't think so. Are you feeling like you're becoming more of a fan of the show as it goes on and things start to get fleshed out a bit more?
Yeah.
So you're tracking with it more.
I am.
Are you getting more into it?
I'm definitely understanding it more than ever. So,
Awesome.
Yeah, this is the first week where I really felt like, okay, I have a grasp over this world.
Yes.
So,
Great stuff. So, in closing, we want to remind everyone, thank you for listening. And if you want to check out more of our stuff, we actually do a podcast that you can find at sci-fi-christian-podcast.com.
that's correct. Well, Ben, that's all from here. I'm Matt Anderson.
I am Ben DeBono.
Now, we are the Sci-Fi Christians, signing off.